Well, welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to talk about all things New Jersey Devils. And when we talk Devils hockey, man, there's not a better person to talk to than my next guest. This is Ace, my man from Running with the Devils podcast. He's here to break it all down for us. Ace, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Benjamin. Really appreciate it.
Happy to have you back. Happy hockey's back, man. I know we're in preseason. I'm just so happy to see just any sort of hockey on TV. It just warms my heart.
I'm right there with you. I'm a summer guy, but once the summer starts coming to an end, I'm like, all right, it's time for preseason, and let's get to dropping these pucks.
100%. So before we dive in, how was summer for you this year?
It was all right. It was personally a little bit of a tumultuous summer, but good nonetheless. Just regular summer stuff, friends and family, and following along with the Devils drama, and just counting down the days for the season to begin.
Cool. Did you make it to Cape May? We talked about Cape May last time.
I have not. So it's just super far for me, man. I have it on the list. I think I might try to go there in the fall. I've heard it's awesome in the fall. I was down at a ton of Jersey Shore spots, but there's so many that are like within an hour or so for me, and Cape May is like a good 3 hours.
If I can make it there from Portland, Maine, I think you can make it there from North Jersey.
I'll eventually make it.
It's a great spot for sure. But yeah, we've of course couple preseason games in now. Any trends, positive, negative, any concerns right now coming out of Devils camp?
I mean, obviously the number one, I would say, kind of issue going on that's been talked about at length for months now is the fact that restricted free agent Luke Hughes still without a contract. I never anticipated it going this deep into camp. Last year we saw Dawson Mercer. I think he was signed on like the first day of camp or something on media day, and he may have missed one day on the ice. I thought we may have seen something like that with Luke, but here we are, through today's actually a week ago camp opened and 2 preseason games, still no Luke Hughes. It seems like there's a little bit of a potential back and forth in the media looking for leverage. Who really knows? And it's just kind of been the ongoing soap opera for the Devils heading into camp. I don't know where the finish line may be. Obviously, all Devils fans are hoping it happens. But in the meantime, the current Devils, as constructed, have quite the cupboard of NHL-ready defensemen. Even with the injury to Kovacevic, he's going to probably be out for a few months, it seems. They're kind of non-committal on the timeline, but he's certainly going to miss a chunk of time. And we have some guys waiting in the wings. And I would say at the moment, especially now, Keefe came out with some interesting quotes this morning. Luke's former college teammate at University of Michigan, Ethan Edwards, has looked pretty damn impressive. I thought he always looked good to me for the past couple of years every time I've seen him live. And this year he looked really good in the Prospects Challenge, and through 2 preseason games here, he seems like he could be legit, and he was paired with Pesce in Luke's spot last night for that drubbing of the Islanders, basically AHL team. I'm never going to get too excited about a preseason game, regardless of what the rosters are. But when it's your almost full NHL team versus an AHL team, you should pound on them. That's what the Devils did. But Edwards looked really good. Keefe has been singing his praises, even more so today. And if I'm kind of watching this all unfold as Luke Hughes, I'm thinking, oh boy, are they going to play hardball and replace me with one of my buddies?
Yeah, who knows? Right now, does Edwards have the scoring touch or the ability to play, power play point like Hughes does for you guys?
No, so he's just more of a steady two-way defenseman. I think he'll bring a little offense, nowhere near the level of Luke in terms of offense.
Right.
But, overall, just sound D-man you could rely on to play minutes and not be a liability. He seems pretty legit. And so, while we would miss Luke Hughes and his offense, I'm starting to think like in a world where he just if he holds out into the regular season, it'd be wild. But what an opportunity it would be for Edwards.
Yeah, 100%, right? And I mean, if you're the GM, what's the number? What's your ceiling number-wise on Hughes?
I'll be honest. So I see both sides of it. And I'm a guy who, when I was younger, I used to bash players that would leave in free agency and all that. And then as I got older, I was like, to me, it's a bit of a childish viewpoint. I mean, everyone wants your guys to stay with your team and sign a good deal. But in the end, if you're being realistic and put yourself in their shoes, if we're talking about anyone's job, right, in the quote unquote regular world, it's like, who in their right mind wouldn't leave their job to go to a competitor for substantially more money? Everyone on the planet would. And so why are we looking at these hockey players that, some people idolize or whatever, but follow along with your team? Why is the standard so different for them? Just because it's a lot more money? And I get it. And I get, hockey guys make more, or most of them, or a good chunk of them, make more in 1 year than many people will see in their lifetime. So I think it's hard for the average fan to kind of sympathize with that. But with that being said, these guys don't have long careers. A lot of them have somewhat limited opportunity or chance post playing. And so they're trying to make sure that when they're done playing hockey, that they're financially secure for the rest of their lives and don't have anything to worry about. And so in that regard, yeah, in this situation, Luke's going to have, no matter what the deal signed, off this one deal alone, would have more money than he'll ever need. Right. But there's been a lot of reports back and forth, and you see the comparables and this and that, and everyone talking about the cap going up and agents playing games and GMs trying to navigate these new waters. And so for me, people were using the Brock Faber deal. I think he was like an 8.5 times 8, but Billy Guerin gave him that before all this cap news. So people are like, oh, Faber, this is a pretty good comp and it should be the same thing. And then I was like, listen, but that was in the old cap climate. So I understand guys trying to get more now. And then Dawson signed the deal he did. I think it was like 9.5. So, in the end with these deals, I always feel like it's tricky. You're kind of gambling on guys, hoping that maybe you overpay for the first couple years, but then it looks like a relative bargain for all the years remaining after that. That kind of happened with Jack Hughes. I mean, they gave him that 8x8 deal that people keep referencing, and how it was on that list of best deals in the league. And I'm sure players and their agents don't want to be on that best deals in the league list. But Fitz took a gamble back then, gave him that deal, and it's worked out pretty well. Injuries aside, obviously that's a whole nother kind of topic. But Jack Hughes at $8 million is phenomenal, and I think that's kind of making the waters a little murky on this one. But I guess taking everything into consideration for me, it seems as though obviously that they want Quinn Hughes to be here, right? So all three players want to play together. Obviously, the most logical place for that is New Jersey because we have 2 of the 3. Jack has 5 years left, and so if Luke signs this 8-year deal, which we're all hoping for, it's essentially setting the table for all the Hughes brothers to be in New Jersey. And Fitz always talks about when signing guys to deals, you got to leave a little meat on the bone so that they can construct the best roster possible. And so for me, in this particular case with Luke, I think a fair number for both sides would probably be around that $9 million mark. I'm hoping for less, but I could see a world where his agent's asking for 10.25, something like that. We don't know, obviously, have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. But I think in the end, 8.5 to 9.5, kind of in that range, I think would be fair for both sides and give Fitz some flexibility to make some moves going forward.
Do you think they're getting caught up on term over money? Because, if I'm a 22-year-old Luke Hughes and I see where the cap is going, give me a 3-year deal at 8.5, 9, and I'll bet on myself at 25 years old.
I could see the logic, but all the reports from the Devils reporters and even national media, I think LeBron's talked about this, it seems as though, and again, we could only take this with a grain of salt, but this is pretty much what everyone's saying, is that both sides want the long-term deal and the money is the holdup. I would try my best to not give him the bridge deal, obviously, and especially because I do think the team's number one kind of priority is to get Quinn Hughes here eventually, whether that's trading for him or signing him in free agency on July 1st, 2027. I do think he will be a Devil, assuming the Luke deal gets done. Now, this is kind of like the linchpin for the whole thing, I think. If this falls apart and there's more bad blood over time, the whole thing could fall apart. But I think they went into this thinking that this is step 2 of getting Quinn here, and we'll see how it goes. But in terms of a bridge, I think it would be a very dangerous game to play if you're the Devils, just because, you say you do give him that bridge deal and then he kind of has a breakout year or two, and now you're in 3 years from now with the cap up even more, he's asking for 12.5, 13 million. So I definitely understand the kind of logic where most teams are trying to lock these guys up and hope that it ages well.
Well, how about something positive out of camp? Any positives?
The positives so far, I would say that for me, I do like the additions of Brown and Dodonov. Dodonov is starting on the top line right for the moment anyway. Now with Hughes and Bratter, I wanted him as more of a depth signing, and I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, our bottom six got bigger, or better rather." But he's playing in the top six, not ideal for me. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, he looked okay last night, I thought. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold on to that spot all season long. I do think there's going to be guys kind of nipping at his heels to try to take that spot. But I think they're both great additions to the roster nonetheless. The bottom six last year was pretty stagnant and was just not producing anything. And on nights where the big guys struggled, the bottom six wasn't giving us anything. And our defensive scoring last year was atrocious as well. And so if the Stars weren't getting it done last year, it was a brutal night. And I think we got shut out 8 times, maybe even 9. It was 8 or 9 times, which is just absolutely horrific given the top end talent that we have. But they got no support from the bottom six. And so I'm hoping Brown and Dodonov, I mean, again, he might play in the top six, but can kind of help give us a more balanced scoring attack. In terms of other kind of things coming out of camp, I mean, the emergence of Ethan Edwards, I talked about him before. We have plenty of defensemen right now, but I think he's an exciting one that's kind of in the mix. What else do we got? And I think Dawson Mercer, he's kind of a guy that the fan base is split on. I've always liked Mercer. He's an all situations guy, plays with hustle, has a lot of heart. He is going to get a chance in the top 6 with Timo Meier and Nico Hischier, it seems, to start the season. And he was also on power play 1. And so the coaching staff has faith in him. They're putting him in a position for best success. And I'm hoping for a big bounce back year. He started off, or not started off, but 22-23, he had a pretty big year. He had like 56 points, I think. And a lot of fans, I think, were just kind of expecting him to elevate from there. It never happened. He regressed a little bit in terms of production. And a lot of people kind of soured on him, but I'll always root for Dawson Mercer, and I think this could be a big year for him as well. So overall, the biggest thing is this team just has to stay healthy.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. And I had Mercer on my list here to bring up later, but I mean, is he a 30-goal guy in your book? Should he be a 30-goal guy?
Should be, I think, is a strong word, Benjamin. I'm going to say could be. Could be. I will say, if he does stay with Bratt and Jack all year long and power play 1, then I would say that's a situation where you probably should be. But I don't get caught up. He does so many other things too. He could kill penalties. You could leave him out there late in the game to protect the lead. Like, I value all that other stuff aside from production. And while I would love to see him score 30 goals, I'm not going to be one of these people that, starts slinging arrows if he doesn't. I'm hoping, again, if he sticks in that top 6 and sees significant power play 1 time, I would love to see, 55, 60 points out of him. 25 and 30, 30 would be absolutely outstanding. But as long as he is not dragging those guys down and pulling his weight, I think 55 to 60 points, however you slice it up, would be a phenomenal year for him. And I think would silence a lot of his critics.
Yeah, when I first looked at his numbers from a year ago, it was kind of one of those kind of ho-hum type of years. And then you look, and he's only 23. Like,
super young.
He feels like this guy's been around forever. He's what, 5th year coming in. Super durable. I don't think he's missed a game.
Iron Man, never missed a game in his career.
So, it's like we got to kind of pump the brakes on trying to throw these guys out when they're still only 23 years old. It's kind of nuts. Yeah. Well, what about, of course, second year with Sheldon Keefe coming over from Toronto? How are the Devil fans feeling about him heading into season number 2?
I think most fans like him. With any fan base in any sports, there's obviously going to be a chunk of the population that has their complaints. So far, I like him a lot. I think last year, given the roster that he was kind of handcuffed with, specifically in the bottom 6, was just a kind of rotisserie of AHL type players for a lot of the year, including in the playoffs. I think he did a really good job. The Devils were phenomenal in the calendar year 2024. October, November, December was phenomenal. They set an NHL record with only allowing opponents 20 shots or less for a stretch of 7 games. And come Christmas, they were looking like a true cup contender and were being talked about kind of nationally as a cup contender. Vegas odds reflected that, and they looked unstoppable. It was an exciting time. And then the holiday break came, calendar turned to 2025, and everything went to hell. It's the multi-million-dollar question, what happened during that break, but they were never the same. They struggled mightily in the second half, kind of fell apart. And if it wasn't for the lead, the points that they banked up in the first few months of the season, they probably would have missed the playoffs. given all those things, I do think with a different coach, there is a chance we would have missed the playoffs last year, given how everything went just so tragically in that second half. And so I have to give him and his system some credit where on some nights we were in games that we probably shouldn't have been in. And, they slid into the playoffs. Granted, they backed in, they got crushed by Carolina, but I'll take that any day over failing to make the playoffs, because missing the playoffs last year would have been, after missing the year before, would have been catastrophic. And so I do like Keefe. Excited to see what he does in year 2 now that he's more familiar with some of these guys. They're more familiar with his system, improve the roster at least a little bit. And so I have pretty high hopes for him in year 2 and hoping that this team can kind of surprise some people.
Yeah, as I think you might remember, I had picked New Jersey to win the East last year, so they really left me. They left me. Man, I must have jinxed Dallas too, because they were my Stanley Cup picks. So, or maybe I just don't know anything about hockey. Maybe that's just it. I'm not sure.
There's so many variables, man. It's hard to predict anything these days.
Yeah. Well, going back to last year, of course, Markstrom, 2.5 goals against, a 900 save percentage. Old man now, 35 years old. What are the expectations for him here this season?
So obviously he started like the team did. He started off pretty hot last year. He was an early season, I think, legitimate Vezina nominee. I don't think he would have won. I think it was always going to be Hellebuck, but he was being talked about in that kind of conversation. And then he got injured and the team started to kind of fall apart. And so he had some subpar outings, later in the year. Finished okay. My hope for him is that this year, obviously, he stays healthy, number one, like everybody else. But I think he will have respectable numbers just off of the strength of, I do love our defense. And while he is getting older, I don't get too concerned about it. For the interim, we do have Allen, who re-signed a super team-friendly deal to be the tandem goalie with him. I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he'll have similar numbers, and I think he'll put up a good amount of wins because I love our defense. I really do. And so assuming we stay healthy is almost the asterisk to everything. Yeah. But I do think he will have a solid year. Hopefully he doesn't break down. I know people look at the age and kind of write guys off, but, being a longtime Devils fan, I saw the great Marchand Brodeur backstop us to a Cup Finals appearance at 40 years of age back in 2012. And we've seen other goals, Bobrovsky in Florida recently. So, age to some extent is just a number. I understand the injury concerns and all that stuff, but in the end, it's not like he's 42 and we're asking for miracles. There are guys who have played really well into their mid 30s and late 30s in net, and I'm hoping Markey could be one of those guys. I would love nothing more than to see Markstrom lift the cup with a Devils jersey on.
That would be something for sure. A good story from last year, outside of just making the playoffs despite all the injuries, your specialty teams were phenomenal. Third in the league in the power play at 28.2%. PK, you guys were second in the league at 82.7%. Repeatable this year?
I think so. I don't see any reason why. In terms of the power play, whenever you have, listen, the reality is the Devils, if you look at their top end talent, it might not be the best in the league, but it's certainly in the top, whatever percent you want to say of the league. When you have Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier, a guy like Dougie on the blue line, Luke Hughes, also capable of running the power play, there's no reason why it shouldn't be repeatable. All the same pieces are here. Again, year 2 under Keefe. I think, while maybe picking them to be top 3 might be a little aggressive, I think they should definitely be towards the top for power play. And I feel the same about the penalty kill. They brought Shaw in. Supposedly he's in the past, helped develop a lot of young defensemen and help defensively for the teams he's been a part of. And I'm hoping that translates to the penalty kill and we don't really miss a beat in terms of special teams. The issue for the Devils a lot last year was inability to score 5-on-5. Power play is obviously going to carry you in a lot of games, but it can't be it can't be the meat and potatoes. You got to be able to score 5-on-5 and then obviously capitalize on the man advantage when you get it. So special teams, I think, will be good. I'm definitely more concerned about the 5-on-5 play, but again, most of the guys are back. We didn't lose any significant pieces, and so I'm not expecting special teams to skip a beat.
So, of course, we know that you have, the Luke Hughes situation kind of looming. Beyond him, though, what is the biggest need right now on this team entering the season?
I mean, the two glaring ones that everyone talks about, which are fair points, I think, is a lot of us have been clamoring for a big physical winger to play with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. I mean, they're two very gifted, high-end offensive talents. Last year, played most of the season with Palat, and I do like Palat, but when you look at them as a line and you say, you know, what could really elevate their games to the next level, I think it's that big physical skilled winger would be a phenomenal ad for those guys. I think it really would help them tremendously. So I think the top six wingers is pretty much on almost all Devils fans number one as a want, or their number one would be a 3C, which we desperately need as well. But most people, it's a 1 and 2, however you want to put it. But a third line center would be phenomenal as well. Another hole kind of when you look at the roster. And right now with Nason out, Mercer is on the second line playing wing. He has played center in the past. He did say last year he is more comfortable at wing, but because of necessity, when Nason comes back, I'm so curious to see what happens with 3C and 4C. I think there's a good chance, you know, Cody Glass might be asked to play 3C. And I like Cody Glass as a 4C. I don't love him as a 3C, but, you know, if he has to end up playing there, hopefully he's up for the challenge, because we don't really have great center depth and haven't for a couple of years.
Yeah, looking at Puckpedia, they've got Glass listed as your 3C, and is it Lamico? Or Lamico?
I don't want to bash the guy, but I mean, he hasn't been in the league for several years. We signed him out of the Swiss league. Like, if that's, you know, if that's how it shakes out, so be it. But Glendenning's making a case for himself as well. He's kind of in the mix. We have a couple other guys in camp, but it does seem like the 4C might be, you know, less than ideal, but hopefully it's somebody, you know, capable of getting the job done.
How would Tage Thompson look in a Devils uniform if everything falls apart in Buffalo again?
Listen, I thought it was so pipe dreamy. I didn't talk about it a lot, but a lot of people are like, oh, who do you think's a realistic guy? I would have been thrilled with Tuck, to be honest.
Oh, sure.
A guy like Tuck with Bratter and Jack, I think would be phenomenal. Now, if you're bringing it to the next level and talking about Tage Thompson, that's like, you know, that's just like the ultimate dream type stuff. I would say he's probably, you know, outside of just saying ridiculous, like superstars in the league, to me, he would be one of the guys I would, if someone was like, you could, you know, get any player in the league, who would you get? He would be on my short list for sure, because I think a monster skilled guy like him on the wing with those two would be immediately, it would put them in the top, it would have to be top 3 lines in the league, I would say. But you know, I just can't. I can't get too wrapped up in I would say pipe dream stuff. And and like I said, thrilled with Tuck, but Tage Thompson, oh my God! Now you're talking about, you know, that would be a serious line.
And I have just pissed off 2 or 3 of my friends right now who are big Buffalo fans. So I'm going to have some beers I'll have to buy later, I'm sure. But it's all good. All right. Hypothetical. The Devils win the division if.
The Devils win the division if. Oof. The Devils win. It's a good one. The Devils win the division if. The Devils win the division if they stay relatively healthy and a couple guys kind of overachieve. And then it's assuming that the big dogs just kind of do the baseline of what you're expecting them to do. I think Mercer's a huge wild card in that. Can he hang on to that top 6 spot and kind of develop into a true top 6 player? I think he's a big element of that. I think Dougie Hamilton, while he didn't have a bad season last year, was not quite as good as 22-23. He was, I still think, kind of nursing a lingering injury from the season before when he tore his pec. But Devils win the division, I think, if Mercer steps up and really claims that top 6 spot and has a sort of breakout year, Dougie Hamilton turns back the clock a little bit and gets closer to that 22-23 production. And then kind of the other point on that for me would be if this kid Gritsuk is the real deal. And it seems like he is. Coming over from the KHL, a lot of people are already penciling him in the top 6. I told everybody, you know, pump the brakes a little bit. I think that's kind of lofty expectations for a guy who has never played a game in the NHL. Let's just see what he could do. But I always thought he was a lock to make the team in a bottom 6 role at a minimum. But if somehow he becomes a story and he starts off hot and he kind of elevates himself into a top 6 role and can be productive there, I think that's a huge win as well. But for the Devils to win the division, I think a lot of things would have to go their way. But I think it starts with Mercer stepping up, Dougie stepping up as well, and then the wild card of Gritsuk. And then the last one on that, I would say, is the bottom six just not being a black hole, because last year they were a black hole and we still made it into the playoffs despite that. But if we could get any sort of normal production from a bottom six, from our bottom six this year, I think that carries the team a long way.
Great. Yeah. I think I did my Metro Division preview. I think I have Carolina 1, New Jersey 2. Of course, I had Carolina out of the playoffs a year ago, which was complete idiocy on my part. But looking when I did that preview, I talked about Jack Hughes, of course, and I kind of asked the question, is Jack Hughes more important to the New Jersey Devils than any other star player is to his team, even McDavid or McKinnon? I mean, because those guys have some pretty big running mates with them. Am I overstating that? Is Jack Hughes the most important player to his team in the NHL?
In the NHL, if not the most important player to his team, definitely one of the top few, for a couple reasons. And I'll the first one is obviously, he is the kind of offensive heartbeat of the team. The team kind of goes as Jack goes. When Jack's playing well, the offense is doing well. We're hopefully winning games. I do think when he's out of the lineup, you obviously feel that void tremendously, more so than other teams. You saw there's been countless other times where big guys go down and the teams don't really take a step backwards too much. Like, I think the Oilers did pretty well in those couple stretches without McDavid, and the same for, other guys on other teams. But Jack really is super important to the Devils. And then kind of a caveat to that is, it seems like, and I hate to be this person, but it seems like when he gets injured, the executives of the team kind of throw their hands up and just kind of punt the year. Like Jack's hurt, we're not going to go out and make any splashy moves at the deadline or do anything because we feel like it could be a waste of assets. I mean, I will never agree with that mentality. There are a lot of people that are of that school of thinking. I never would be or will be, but it does seem like, Jack was out last year. We were talked about around the new year as a cup hopeful or legitimate cup contender. Jack goes down, and then at the deadline, we got Cody Glass and Daniel Sprong. Like, that doesn't, scream we're pushing for a cup this year. And I think Jack being hurt was a huge part of that. And so aside from, missing what he does on the ice, I think in terms of roster construction and making moves, if he's not going to be in the playoffs, I think that's going to impact that as well. And so when you combine the two things, he probably is the most important player to his team in the league.
Yeah, it's a question I asked Rick Kowalski, who is now our head coach here for the ECHL Maine Mariners, of course, an assistant with the Devils a few years ago and ran the AHL club for you guys ages ago. And I asked him about Hughes and how do you keep him healthy? And he was very funny. He said, well, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd still be in New Jersey. It's like, good point. But, he had a couple good points about, Jack maybe needing to learn to, not go into the boards every time, maybe stick lift a little more, get around the pile, not go right into the pile sometimes. And, he also kind of mentioned that some of these hits he's taken on that shoulder haven't been like egregious hits. It seems like he gets hurt maybe sometimes a little too easily. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's just bad luck or if there are things in his game that he can kind of mature in terms of knowing how to take a hit or how to avoid, those injury potential situations.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. He's never played 82 games. I think the only year he didn't get injured was one of those like COVID weird seasons.
Yeah.
And it seems like every year the story is, how long is he going to last? And it's unfortunate. And it seems like based on a media scrum from last week in camp that he's a little sensitive to it and gets a little snippy. But I think the questions are fair. He's in year 7 now and he's played one full season, which wasn't a real full season because it was shortened because of the, the COVID thing. It's fair. And I wish, I don't think anyone has the answer, but it just seems like he's one of those guys that when we've seen it in all pro sports, right? There's certain guys that seem more injury prone than others and always seem to get injured one way or another. And so I do think a lot of it can't be prevented per se, but I think you could limit that with bulking up a little bit. I mean, he is an undersized guy. I'm not asking him to be, the Hulk, But when you look at some of his other teammates over the years, guys like Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, they're not any, they're not physical specimens per se, but they definitely take their off-season training seriously. And you've seen the kind of physical maturation of them since they got in the league. I don't know that Jack has gotten much bigger. I think there was one off season where he did bulk up a little bit, but by and large, if you look at him compared to some of the guys he's going up against in the league, he's still a little bit undersized. Would like to see him bulk up for sure, but that's hard to do in the off season as well when you're constantly rehabbing injuries.
Right.
So it's just kind of like this, around and around we go. Obviously a lot of it probably has to do with, to avoid injury, maybe playing a little bit smarter, but he's a pretty smart player and he plays hard.
Yeah.
And so when you combined all that, sometimes you're going to be on the wrong end of collisions and get these injuries. But it is unfortunate that this is kind of a narrative that's followed him. And whether he likes it or not, when the questions arise, they're fair questions. The history is what it is. I'm hoping that this season we could put this to bed. He plays all 82 games, scores 137 points, and wins the Hart Trophy. And we can never talk about this again. But it is a fair, talking point because this has just been a constant throughout his young career thus far.
Yeah, it kind of, in a much lesser degree, reminds me of one of our players up here in Boston, Matty Patra, who has kind of dealt with injuries. Undersized guy. It was very funny when he came into camp last year. The big story was, he's gained 10 pounds. Okay, you're going to lose that in training camp. So, it can be a little bit challenging for some of these guys. But, yeah, to your point, if he can play 70 to 80 games, be a 100-plus point guy, you guys are right there winning the East, or right around it, right?
Oof. Are you talking about in the playoffs or regular season?
Well, both. I think I just put you guys way up there. If Hughes can be a healthy player.
I would like to believe it. And again, I always tell we have Devils fans have a good portion of doomers that complain about everything, and I try to be positive, but I do feel like in recent years there's been legitimate things to complain about, and I'm not going to refrain from complaining about those things when they arise. But if things work out, and it starts with the health, I do think there is a chance that this team could go on a deep run and maybe even make a cup final. I don't think it's impossible for them to win the cup. But when you look at the roster on paper and you look at some other teams, you're like, are they the favorite? No, absolutely not. And I do believe there's no reason why any logical person wouldn't pick the Panthers to win probably every year for the next few years, because they've proven that they could do it. They're built to win. They have a great roster. They have all the ingredients you need of Stanley Cup winning teams, and they've been there before. 3 finals in a row now, back-to-back cup champs. And so, to me, they're my favorite to win the cup for the foreseeable future. But that's not to say that they couldn't be upset with, the right mix of things going against them. And I think for the Devils, it would have to start with, Jacob Markstrom playing completely out of his mind and stealing some games. But with the special teams we talked about and some of the other things in a playoff series, you might be able to get lucky and knock them out. But for me, I'm picking the Panthers every year for probably the next few years, but not to write my Devils off. If they stay healthy and some things go our way, I think they could be a legitimate cup contender. So for the East, it's tough, man. I would love to say with a straight face that I'm expecting them to win the East. I can't, because of the Panthers and Carolina we talked about has owned our souls in the playoffs for eternity. Would love to get over that hump eventually as well. But if the Devils can win a cup and someone else takes out Carolina on the way, I wouldn't be too upset.
Yeah, there's only one person up here in Maine that's happy about this Florida Panthers run, and that's my freaking therapist. All right, it's just ridiculous. Just nightmares, man. Nightmares. I'm not over it, but, now I got to watch my boy, 63 down there, skating with those guys. So it's just it's vomit central for Bruin fans.
I would have loved Marchand forever. I've said to Devils fans for the past few years, like, we don't have that agitator skill guy. For the Devils back in the day, it was Claude Lemieux. Like, that's the best comparison I could come up with. Could score, will hit, will get under the opponent's skin, just be a real scumbag and do anything they can to win. And people are like, oh, I don't want Marchand. He's dirty, this, that. And some people complain. I said, that's a guy that you hate when he's on the other team, and that's a guy that you love to have on your team. And I probably have all the text, but the day that it was announced, the trade that he was going to Florida, I said, unbelievable. the rich get richer. And I said, he is the perfect fit for that team.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, he goes there. And if it wasn't for Bennett having an all-time ridiculous playoff, he probably would have won the Conn Smythe. It's not only like, he contributed a little bit. He was a main character in the story. What a playoff for Marchand. I mean, my God, I my heart goes out to Bruins fans. It sucks, but I can't imagine how good it feels to be a Panthers fan right now. And I saw it coming. I did. I'm not trying to, pat myself on the back, but it was like that made perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect fit for that team. Came in, fit like a glove. And all I can say is hats off to Bill Zito, man. That guy is just redefining what it means to be a cunning GM in this league. And people should be taking notes.
Agreed. And, a lot of Bruins fans were pissed at Sweeney because any chance they can get pissed at Don Sweeney, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
But then when you realize that, if you believe most of what was written about it, that Sweeney did Brad a solid. There were better offers out there for him. I think the LA Kings were high on him. There were a couple other Western teams. He didn't want to go West. He wanted to stay East, wanted to have a chance to win. You got a first-round pick. Could you have gotten more had you put him really on the open market? Probably, but I do think it was a situation where Swedes did Marchand a favor. Pisses us off, but
yeah, I would never kill a GM for that either. Just because, I think Marchand definitely kind of earned that right from the organization for all the years he's put in with them and what he's been able to do. And I think that does go a far way with players in the future. Had Sweeney said, "Oh, screw you, I don't care where you go," and cashed him in for the highest return and sent him somewhere less desirable that he didn't want to go, players talk. People don't realize that, while these guys kill each other on the ice, they are part of the same players association, and they are essentially in business with one another as professional athletes playing in the league. And I do think when you do a guy solid like Sweeney did in that scenario, I think that goes a long way with the players. And, not doing that, I think would have kind of put him in a negative light. And you never know when that's going to come up with another guy in the future, or when a guy's deciding to sign between a couple teams. I think stuff like that definitely helps.
I think so too. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. So as Bruins fans, I know we're talking New Jersey today, but it is a true blue changing of, new chapter, new era. He was never coming back in the offseason. We had a lot of people say, "Oh, Brad's going to come back." No. Once they trade him, he was gone. But another player I want to talk about before we move on for the Devils is Timo Meier. Of course, you mentioned him earlier. 53 points a year ago in 80 games. Not horrible, but probably not the 35, 40 goals that he's had in the past. But there he is.
It's always Timo time on this channel.
Always Timo time. What? Where is he at? Where's he at heading into the season? What do you think?
I love Timo Meier. Again, I'm an old school fan, as you know, and I grew up watching the Dynasty Devils and in a different league that I miss dearly. While I do like the new, faster, skilled league, I do miss the 90s kind of rock'em sock'em version of hockey. And I do think you need, as the Panthers have shown, right, you do need some of those throwback kind of guys to go deep in the playoffs and win cups. Our top six prior to Timo getting here was super, super soft. And I was thrilled when we got Timo. He is our only kind of nasty-ish player in the top six, and I think you need that. You can't just have it in the bottom six. I think you need a little bit of it in the top six as well. I think Timo fits that mold beautifully for the Devils. He has been kind of targeted by a lot of our fan base, which I'm not surprised about. And it all starts with, like anybody else, they look at the contract and he's making like 8.875 or whatever it is. And people wanted to see, 40 goals every single year, 80, 90 points. And the reality is, while I would love to see that, I mean, like I said about with Mercer, I do value the other stuff that he brings. Right. He is a pain in the ass. People hate playing against him. He gets under the opponent's skin. He'll throw a hit. He'll crash the net. He'll do all those things. And so I'm hoping for him, for me, despite the contract and whatever the detractors say, for me, I think given all the other things that he does that I just talked about, I would be happy with a 30-30 season from Timo. Give me 30 goals. Give me 30 assists. Give me 60 points. Go out there, be a son of a bitch to play against, smash people, run the goalie, do your thing, and keep it moving. I would love to see him get, 70 points, 40 goals, 30. Would love to see it. Sure. I'm not going to say that he's, underperforming if he doesn't do that. And in the Rangers series in 22-23, he was a huge factor in that first round where we beat the Rangers in 7 games, despite not recording a single point. He was crashing Shesterkin, face washing guys. He was everywhere. He was definitely in their psyche and had an impact on the series for sure and didn't score a point. And so I value all those things. A lot of people nowadays, I think, just look at straight production when they're critiquing and killing guys. I definitely won't be one. I love Timo, and I'm hoping for a big year from him. If he could start hot, the March of Meier is when he turns it on in March. If he could come out of the gates flying, I would love to see the 40-goal season. But I think a lot of that for him, and this is another thing that people often discredit, is in San Jose when he was putting up all those points, he was on power play 1. Last year, he didn't have that opportunity till very late in the season. I think it was after Jack got hurt is when he finally got his chance. And I think the preseason, I think he started on power play 2. So we don't really know. But I will say, power play time obviously is going to play a huge role in what his final production is. Even on power play 2, often power play 2 for the Devils often is like, garbage time, like 25, 30 seconds. The first unit will stay out there forever. And so you don't really get a true look. Mercer seems to be starting on power play 1 as the net front guy. But if Timo gets on there or even some power play 2, I still think that 30-30 is very possible. Would love to see more. But for me, that's the kind of barometer. 30-30 out of Timo, I think would be a good year. And, the more the better.
And to your point, you have to have a little fear on that top 6. You have to give the other team something to think about, not just when the 3rd, 4th line type, players are out there. And it's far more than just the stat sheet, right? We're, up here in Boston, we're going to have that with Tanner Jeannot this year. All the moaning and groaning about us signing him. He's not much of a goal scorer, but he's got that physical presence that, Sweeney and Cam Neely love. So, we'll be really curious to see how much Timo time you get. I had to ask. I know he's one of your favorites. So,
love Timo.
All right. We're going to do a little exercise now. So, you ready?
Okay.
A little bit of exercise, a little bit of Metro Division exercise. I'm going to say a team name. Give me just the first couple sentences that come to your mind.
Okay.
We're going to start Pittsburgh Penguins.
First thing that comes to mind is Sid is such a legend. I mean, my God, one of my favorite non-Devils for the past 20 years. Absolute legend, still getting it done in his older age. I mean, I'm going to have to rant about Sid for a minute because I love Sid. I know he takes his off-season preparation very seriously. That's something I admire as well. There's a lot of guys across sports that are naturally gifted and excel, but to do it for as long as he has, the preparation is a big part of it. I admire that a lot. And wow, I guess my kind of follow-up to that is with the Penguins is, does Sid stay there for the rest of his career? That's kind of been in the news the past couple of days. And it's like, do you want to be the guy who rode it out to the very end? And if that's the case, we may have seen Sidney Crosby play his last playoff game, which would be pretty sad. I mean, what an era it's been. I was at his first NHL game. It was in New Jersey, October 5th, 2005. Wow. Nice. We are a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the 20th anniversary of Sidney Crosby's NHL debut. Crazy. And to think that he's been one of the best players in the league every single year since then. Absolutely phenomenal career. Great ambassador for hockey, all-time great, and has done everything already in the sport. And yeah, I'm just very curious to see, how it all ends. Does he stay in Pittsburgh, or does he look to try to get one more cup and another sweater? It'd be very, very odd to see him in another jersey, obviously, but that's kind of the first. It's just all the Sidney Crosby stuff when I hear about Pittsburgh.
That will be a storyline in the NHL all season, no doubt about it. New York Islanders.
New York Islanders, kind of a wild card to me. I never really know what to make of them. Whenever you have a guy like Sorokin, I think you always have a chance. Despite maybe not having the best roster, like, could they make a push for the playoffs this year? I don't think it's impossible. I probably wouldn't pick them, but man, a good goalie could bring you a long way. And Sorokin's kind of struggled a little bit. If he could return to, a few years ago, he was phenomenal. If he could return to that, could he carry them? One of my good buddies is an Islander fan from when we were kids, and he's always just kind of in turmoil. But they had their nice little run when Lou was there. Shout out to Lou Lamoriello, probably still trying to get hired somewhere for something. Love Lou. But the Islanders to me is always a wild card. They're always one of those teams that it's like you never know what you're going to get, and it always seems like they always play tough games against the Devils as well. So I'm not counting them fully out because when you got Sorokin, I think you always got a chance.
Philadelphia Flyers.
Oof.
Dirty,
Flyers,
stinking Philly.
Philly, I think they're going to suck. And a team, and when I just think historically, the Devils had great rivalries with them kind of from the mid-90s to early 2000s. We beat them in the conference finals in 95 and 2000 en route to winning cups. And then obviously all those great Stevens-Lindros battles. So I guess not even selfishly, but just for the rivalry, I would like to see them be relevant again. And for the Devils and Flyers to be a good rivalry. It seems like right now the Devils' really only rivals are essentially the Rangers and the Canes. Like the Flyers just kind of dissipated over the years. It doesn't feel the same when we play them. And yeah, I personally, because of all those battles back in the day, don't really like Philly anything. Growing up in New Jersey, and I dealt with a lot of Eagles and Flyers and whatever fans in college. But Flyers, I think, are probably they're probably in for a few bad years, I think, and probably some more painful years for their fans. But I personally would like to see them be somewhat relevant because I think rivalries is what makes the game great. And right now it just seems like there's not many great ones for the Devils. And especially with the format now, we're playing the Rangers 3 times this year. We don't play them until March. Like back when I was a kid, we played them 6-7 times, and it was just like bloodbaths every time. Playing them so infrequently doesn't help. And then when one of the teams is bad, obviously, again, that kind of dims the light on it as well. So I'm hoping for them to be relevant. I love a good battle of the turnpike, if you will. Devils Flyers when it matters.
All right. Columbus Blue Jackets.
Columbus Blue Jackets. Oof. For some reason, I don't know why. When I hear the Blue Jackets, I always think of Elvis. He I don't know why. Oh shit, did I knock this out? I don't think so.
No, you're still I can still hear you.
It seemed like he's been disgruntled the past couple of years. There was a rumor the Devils were looking at him years ago and they needed a goalie, but I always think of him. But another team where, could they squeak in? I think they could. I like a lot of their players. Last year, the Devils had I think it was a home and home late in the year. Tough team with some tough players. The Devils had a home and home with them. And in the game in Columbus, I think the Devils were, I forget what the score was. It may have been 1-0 even, or maybe 2-1 going into the third period in Columbus. And they absolutely steamrolled the Devils in the third period. Jake Allen was a net, and he somehow slammed the door and got the win. But they took it to us, and we almost blew it. And this is when the Devils' lead for the playoffs was shrinking, and the Jackets were kind of surging. And it was like those two games could depend who gets in and who doesn't. I think the Devils actually won both of them. And ultimately, when you look back at the season, when how the Devils backed in, had they lost both of those games, I think they could have free fell and missed. But Jackets, another team I think is going to be tough. Obviously, they dealt with that whole tragedy with Johnny Gaudreau, horrible story. Yeah. And almost squeaked into the playoffs despite a lot of people picking them to be terrible. Again, I think they're another one because the Metro I don't expect to be very good. I would not be stunned if they found their way in.
New York Rangers.
Hated rival since my childhood. Became a Devils fan in 94. Obviously lost to them in Game 7, the Stephane Matteau wraparound. And then obviously Devils won the Cup the next year. But back then, a lot of great playoff series between the two teams. But I will always despise them and their fans. And that, regardless of, the success of the teams at the moment, that one will forever be, the Devils' main rivalry and will always get the fans riled up. But for the Ranger fans that like to talk smack to the Devils, I will say quickly, I just don't understand where this kind of entitlement or whatever they want to think about themselves compared to the Devils, because the Devils have won 3 Stanley Cups since their last one. And the last two playoff matchups, we beat them. 2023, we beat them in 7 games. And then I think the last one before that was the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012. Henrique, it's over. Knocked him out in game 6 with Lundqvist. So I do think, in recent times, I don't see how the Ranger fans have this arrogance about them in regards to the Devils with all the stupid little sayings they have, like little brother and this and that. But growing up in northern New Jersey with just throngs of Rangers fans around you, combined with the actual battles on the ice and the rivalry, they'll always be the number one hated rival. And I would love to see them miss the playoffs again. But like I said with the Islanders, when you have a guy like Shesterkin, I can never count you out of it.
Exactly. Okay, 2 more. Which one do you want? Let's go Washington Capitals.
First thing I think of the Caps is Ovi. I mean, my God. Another guy like Sid. I mean, dominant for years and years. Amazing career. He got his cup. He doesn't have all the other kind of accolades that Sid might have, but another guy that I always enjoyed watching as one of my more favorite guys in the league that wasn't a Devil. I was fortunate enough to be at the game when he broke the record on Long Island. Shout out to my buddy Pat. I just mentioned him before, the Islanders fan. He had a partial season plan and happened to have that game. And we were texting about it, and he was like, "Oh, I actually have an extra ticket. Do you want to go to the game?" And I was like, "What? Yes." And was on the island for when Ovechkin scored .895. I mean, wow.
Awesome.
What an absolute legend Ovechkin is. One of the records that, aside from hockey, it was a pro sports record that many thought was completely unbreakable. And I will say, even though he just broke it, I can't see anyone ever breaking that. That is just such a ridiculous record to me that, it combines, you obviously have to be a phenomenal player and have ridiculous longevity. Like even to get 900 goals, right? I mean, and who knows what he finishes at. If this is his last year, and it could be. I hope it's not. But you're talking about even 900 goals. That's 20 45-goal seasons. Who was doing this, Benjamin? Who was doing this? Unless the only way I could see it being broken is if somehow in years from now they're like, oh, the NHL schedule is 162 games.
Right.
Outside of that, who is scoring 45 goals for 20 seasons? I'm going to have to call that an unbreakable record now. And I know that they said that already once, but I mean, it's just something to marvel at. I mean, what a time to be alive, to see the NHL career of Alexander Ovechkin.
Phenomenal. Yeah, the level of consistency, the level of health, when you say it out loud, that many years at 45 goals, it seems freaking impossible. And I know all my Toronto buddies are going to say, oh, Matthews, he's going to do what he's going to do with that. I don't know, man. I don't see anybody right now touching that record.
No. And I say the same about Marty's wins record. He has 691. That's essentially 20, 35 win seasons. And especially now how they baby these goalies and they're getting 50 to 55 starts. Marty was, aside from being great, was a workhorse. To his credit, he started 72, 74, 75 games to push that wins record to what it is. But I can't see a goalie getting 20, 35 win seasons. And so I think Marty's wins record is unbreakable as well. But circling back to Washington real quick, lots of people thought they were overachieving last year with the regular season they had. I do think I don't think they're going to replicate that, but I do think they'll be a playoff team and they could be potentially dangerous too. They're another kind of all over the place team in my opinion, but who really wants to go up against Ovechkin in the playoffs?
Yeah, I had them down a little bit, but squarely in the playoffs too. They're not going to be a 111-point team. They had a lot of guys with career years last year, but I still think, and again, the fact they're running it back, they really have essentially the same team. That third line might be kind of a younger line, maybe can give them a boost, but that should be fun. Last one here, Carolina Hurricanes.
Absolutely hate them. They're our daddy. They've owned us forever. For whatever reason, Rod Brind'Amour, and I wanted him as a coach desperately. I never thought he'd leave Carolina, but back in the years ago, I was like, if we could ever get Brind'Amour, he's done a phenomenal job down there. And even like you said last year yourself, you picked them to miss the playoffs. They lost a bunch of guys, including 2 to the Devils. We got Pesci and Nason. I think they lost a couple other guys I forget offhand right now. But people are like, oh, this is the year. It's all going to fall apart. And I told people, I said, I don't think they're going to be fantastic, but I am never counting out a Rod Brindamore team ever. Ever will I ever count them out. And sure enough, they lost all those guys, and it didn't seem business as usual.
Yeah.
Business as usual. Get to the playoffs, knock the Devils out. And I mean, they're just one of those teams. They're a winning program, a winning culture. And I think they're almost to the point now where they kind of, to me, they're reminiscent in some ways of my old school Devils that were just like, no matter what happens, they're going to find a way and they're always going to be a threat. And that's kind of how I feel about Carolina. But they've owned us in the playoffs forever. And the Devils really need to exercise those demons at some point. And we unfortunately or unfortunately start the season where the tragedy ended last year in the playoffs, blowing that 3-goal lead in an elimination game 5 in Carolina, where I was already envisioning myself going to game 6 back at home and drinking those ice cold beers outside before the game and the fan fest. I was already there mentally, and 3-goal lead evaporated. We lose, heartbreak in Raleigh, eliminated in 5, and that we're returning to the scene of the crime to open the season this year. While it's a regular season game, obviously, and has nowhere near the significance of a playoff game, I'm hoping that these guys remember how they felt skating off that ice surface in April, and that we come out and kick their ass on opening night to start the season off on the right foot.
Yeah, exercise those demons. I think Carolina has the best chance of, if anybody's going to knock Florida off, I do think Carolina has the best chance, but we shall see. A couple more questions here for you. I do have a couple of more personal questions just around your podcast, but of course, your ECHL team is Adirondack in the North Division with my Maine Mariners of the Boston Bruins. I know you mentioned Edwards earlier on. Any kind of rising prospects or prospects kind of down in that level that we should be keeping an eye on?
Man, ECHL. To be honest, for some of our prospects, I think a lot of them are probably going to be in the A in Utica. So I'm just trying to think who might be more of an ECHL guy.
Doesn't have to be an ECHL guy, but just maybe a couple names to be watching.
If Edwards doesn't make the main team, he's obviously a guy to watch. He would definitely be in Utica if he doesn't make the big club, or maybe hang around as a 7th. I don't know. But aside from him, we have this kid, Matthias Malofsky, who has really impressed, I think, in camp and in the Prospects Challenge. He hasn't played in the preseason yet. I'm hoping to see him Friday. We have a split squad scrimmage which I hate, by the way, where there's a team playing at home and there's a team playing on the road. So it's going to get all wonky.
This isn't baseball.
with the rosters. Yeah, I don't like that they do that. And especially obviously because I can't watch them both live. But I think Malofsky's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think he's going to be good. Cam Squires is another kid who I will start in Utica that I think has real NHL potential, skilled forward, very shifty. He's looked good every time I've seen him live and watched in the Prospects Challenge. Squires, yeah, those would probably be the main 3, but I think Edwards is probably going to be around the NHL team at this point. But Malofsky, Squires, and is there anyone else I'm forgetting? I'm trying to think. There's a couple others during the Prospects Challenge. Yeah, I think those are my main ones for now.
Yeah, to your point, it's so hard to go from the ECHL all the way to the NHL. It happens so infrequently. But every once in a while, we've had a couple come from Maine, like DiPietro. The goalie was with us a few years back, and he's knocking on the Boston door right now. So, well, good. We'll keep an eye on those couple of players. Now, turning to your podcast, of course, we talked a little bit before we came on air, but can you share what is the most annoying thing about being a New Jersey Devils podcast personality?
Oof, the most annoying thing?
I know you got a long list, I'm sure.
I could talk about that for an hour, but I would say, and I don't think it's necessary. It's not exclusive to the Devils, but I would just say for any sports team, I guess, is obviously you have a wide range of people that you're kind of communicating with. And I think it's just kind of trying not to be too negatively influenced by overly negative people, whether it's about the team, about you personally, which I definitely have a contingency of people that hate me for whatever reason, and bless them. You need the haters along with the supporters. But I would just say, yeah, just kind of trying to filter out some of the background noise with overall negativity about either yourself or the team is probably the one that I'm trying to get better at as time goes on. But and then just with anyone making videos, as you know, it's just a lot of time consuming stuff, and technology is never on my side. So kind of fighting that uphill battle as an older gentleman as well. But I do enjoy it. It is a fun hobby, but it definitely has some days where you're like, damn, this is brutal.
I get it. Now, on average, how many games do you go to live there at the Rock?
I would say historically, regular season games, I'd probably go to about a dozen or so. Last year, I probably went to a little bit more. But I would say this year, I probably will hit that at least. I did go to both preseason games thus far because I've just been itching to get back to a game.
Yeah.
But I would say probably somewhere in the this season will probably fall somewhere in the 12 to 20 mark, I would say.
Nice. Decent. If you could have one person from the NHL as a guest on your podcast, who would that one person be?
Ooh, current players?
Anybody from the world of the NHL. Has to be alive.
Well, so we can't go to the grave.
We're not waking any of the dead.
It would be an easy one for me, and the GOAT, man. My number one would definitely be Marty, hands down. My favorite player of all time. Still obviously working for the Devils in his role in the executive team, but Marty was my childhood hero. Got to watch his whole career, witness him win all the cups, Vezinas, break the wins record at home, which was awesome. I was there when he won 552, beat the Blackhawks to pass Waugh. So for me, it would be Marty, just because what he means to the organization, what he means to me personally, and just kind of becoming a fan as his emergence of his whole career and following it super closely. Going to practices when I was a kid, they practiced pretty close to where I live, and going to a ton of games, and meeting him a million times throughout the years. It makes it a pretty easy decision. And he's a very good storyteller too. I've aside from the interviews he's done, I've kind of been in places where I was close by and listening to him tell stories. I wish he did more appearances and stuff. And did more interviews, because he is a wealth of hockey knowledge and has absolutely phenomenal stories. So Marty would definitely be my number one, and then I'll give my next couple would be, for the same exact reasons, would be Scott Stevens and Lou Lamoriello.
Nice. That'd be a couple solid podcasts. Now, listen, you got so many followers out there, all kinds of people in Jersey. People, let's make this happen for our guy A. Somebody's got to know Marty. Somebody's got to have a cousin
Marty,
or an uncle
I don't
something.
know.
Come on.
Marty, that might be a tough one. I think I have a better chance with the other two, but Scotty doesn't like really doing interviews either. But I did actually talk to him for several minutes at an event last year. And I told him that I have a podcast and blah, blah, blah. And I told him, I know you hate doing media. And I was like, eventually I'm going to reach out. And I'm like, and I'm really going to beg you until you do it, because
Nice.
The fans need to hear the stories from the glory years. So I'm hoping at some point that one could come true. And I did the same with Lou Lamoriello at the same event, actually.
Nice. Hey, planting some seeds anyway. I know when I had Rick Kowalski on, of course, another New Jersey guy, the stories he had was just phenomenal. I don't know if it's something about New Jersey guys and their stories, but he could have talked for hours of stories. But that's awesome.
For sure.
So, what's coming up next on Running with the Devils podcast?
Well, pretty much, mostly the same. I will be doing the post game live that people seem to enjoy after I do it. After the MSG is the Devils Network. Unfortunately, we're playing on freaking Dolan's network for years now, but when the MSG post game goes off the air, which is typically like a half hour or so after the game ends, then I come on and do what I call the post game live and read, a bunch of people's comments. In the past, sometimes I've done call-ins and things of that nature, but people seem to enjoy that, talking about the game we just watched. So I'll definitely be doing that. Hoping to have a bunch more interviews with former players coming up. That's always kind of that's my favorite part of all of this, is just hearing the stories from some of these guys from back in the day. It's definitely my favorite part of this whole experience that or whatever you want to call it, that I'm on right now.
Yeah.
And so that is always the most fun for me, is to kind of pick these guys' brains and try to extract some little golden nuggets of stories from over the years. So I'm hoping to do a bunch of those this season and have some guys lined up that I hopefully can get done soon.
Awesome. And I'll just say this publicly to anybody: if you're not following Ace's channel, Running with the Devils podcast, highly recommend it. Even if you're not a Devils fan, the level of engagement he gets on his channel and those live streams you do, it's just good, entertaining hockey talk, man. I absolutely love what you're doing.
I really appreciate that, Benjamin. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Well, Ace, thank you so much for taking the time today, man. I know we're all busy, so this was a great hour. Thank you so much for the time.
Anytime, man.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching and listening today. If you've already subscribed to my channel, I want to say thank you. If you're new to the channel, thanks for taking a chance on this. If you haven't done so, want to stay up to date on all things coming up here on the show, hit that little subscribe button down below. And as I always say, until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless.
Roll it, young and grinding, you gon' get it. Put them peas up in the stoley. You gon' drive 1,000 miles till his pockets keep on growing. I be skating all the ice on my neck like a goalie. When she with you, yeah, shorty, she pursuing me. Would hate if I was you, yeah. We the best to do it, baby. We the best to do it, We the best to do it, baby. Got a hat trick, that 3 shorties on the daily. My mom gone, I just crashed a new Mercedes. Took a picture with a